All right. Welcome to the Alaska Healthy Schools Learning Collaborative session on school wellness policies. This is student nutrition and physical activities policies and how they can support you in student success. Cyde and I are your presenters today, and we'll each kind of give an intro about ourselves. But how about those of you who are on the line? If you don't mind, if you can see the chat function, why don't you also introduce yourself, what part of the state you're calling in from, and then maybe something that's a fun thing you like to do for physical activity over the holidays, since we're getting close to Thanksgiving next week. I'll start. I am Lauren Kelsey, and I work with the Alaska Physical Activity and Nutrition Program, formerly known as Obesity Prevention and Control. I see that on the slides. And I've been with public health for about almost 15 years, and about half with the physical activity and nutrition team. I like talking about policies. Not everyone loves that. I nowadays do more of kind of our evaluation stuff and not quite as much directly working with schools, but I was a part of the team back in 2016 that worked with the School Board Association to make our model local wellness policy for Alaska. So that's kind of my role. And I love, I was just telling Cyde as we were warming up, I used to get to do a water polo tournament every morning on Thanksgiving, and I loved just being like tired at the end of the day to go for the feast. But I don't play that anymore, but my family usually tries to go for a cross-country little ski tour before buckling down at the table. How about you, Cyde? Do you want to jump in?
Sure. I'm Coil, and I work for the child nutrition programs at the Department of Education. And I am a child nutrition program coordinator, and I run our 1801 school health and academic achievement grant for the state, as well as our farm to school grant. I do the wellness policies for the National School Lunch Program, and just kind of whatever else Joe tells me to do. So, and I'm the same. If I'm in Juneau, so if there is snow, I like to go for a longer cross-country ski or something. And then if there's not, I have my favorite running trails right behind my house, so I'll just go for a run with the dogs. So everybody's tired and hungry.
Cyde has the best fluffy white dog that maybe we can get a picture of before we get.
Come here.
And, oh, is he coming up to say? What is it? Is he Turner or Hunter? Sorry, what's his name?
His name's Turner.
Oh, baby. So it looks like sledding and cross-country skiing. Good. If you're going to live in Alaska, you might as well love the winter sports outside. Okay, so just a little bit on, now I'm trying to move slides, sorry. Click. Give me one moment. There, it's coming. Okay. Just a little session overview of what we'll be covering in this, hopefully a little less than an hour. A little bit about why we are here talking about local wellness policies, why we care, and hope you will too. And basic high-level overview of the wellness policy requirements, some resources available to you for assessing your local policy, ways to get involved in communicating and implementing it. Since everything is COVID all the time, thought we'd touch in a little bit about things that have happened in student nutrition and physical activity during the COVID pandemic, and could have some conversation around that. And then have some time at the end for Q&A, but again, as we said, with the small group, I would say feel free to take yourself off mute or type into the chat questions as we go along, especially if we like throw out some lingo-y, jargony thing. I think it's nice just to answer it as we go. So why we care, why we look at school wellness policies. We know that schools are a really critical location, a critical place for helping youth to establish their lifelong healthy behaviors. We know that healthy students are actually better learners. And so it's a win-win for both those of us at the public health side and on the education side. And we know that working with schools is a really good place for health equity, that all students deserve the opportunity to be healthy and successful. And if you can set up that they're getting a good foundation of strong nutrition and physical activity during the half of the school day, sometimes more than half of the calories they're eating during the day, that can help set up for good health for our communities. This better health equals better learners is part of the CDC Healthy Schools kind of toolkit. And there's really just, I think, we like to point out, we know that schools are asked to do a lot, and teachers are, are the counselor, are the mental health support, are the so many different roles in kids' lives, and just what's the, they also are really held to making sure that they are academically successful. So it's something we try to point out as much as we can, is that if you take the time to have strong policies and practices that give good nutrition to kids, that give them enough time to have physical activity during the day, it actually will help with those academic outcomes as well. There's quite a few studies showing links to fewer behavioral problems in the classroom, lower absenteeism, even things down the line like higher graduation rates and higher test scores for those kiddos that have strong wellness policies, strong nutrition and physical activity practices at their school. And then we know that healthy youth grow into healthy adults. So all of the chronic diseases we're trying to prevent, and cancers and diabetes and health weight-related diseases are a benefit as well. Raise your hand if you know how to do the raise your hand function, if you've seen this slide already, but I feel like this is one of a nice image that just kind of touches on the benefits, those benefits we just talked about. So this is 2 brain scans of 2 students that are taking the exact same test. And that one on the left, the quiet brain in the blues, is a student taking a test after 20 minutes of just sitting quietly. And that one on the right, with all the different active parts of the brain engaged, is a student taking that same test after just 20 minutes of walking. So this doesn't have to be like a full PE class right in front of the test, although there have been studies that show like kids who have PE right before math tend to do better in math. There's things like that, but really just getting up and moving and walking can really make a difference. And this happened to be after 20 minutes, but we're seeing that, even something as much as 5 minutes of physical activity can really make a difference in how engaged a student is on their in their learning. So those are just a little bit about the why we care. And then transitioning to Cyde to go over kind of the key pieces that are covered in a local wellness policy.
Thanks, Lauren. So your local wellness policy is pretty much just focused on creating a healthier school environment, which includes nutrition, physical education, and even some like mental health stuff. But we're going to cover the school nutrition program ahead right now. Go ahead, Lauren. So we all know that students need to be well fed to learn, and the student needs to have access to healthy foods and beverages while they're at school, because a lot of students aren't getting it when they're home. So your wellness policy needs to cover if you're a part of the National School Lunch Program, then you have to have a wellness policy that talks about that all the food that is served for the school lunch program will be,
Follow
it
all
will
the
be,
regs.
yeah. If you want to get reimbursed for it, it has to follow, you have to play by the rules. That's just how federal programs work. But the other part of it is the food and beverage marketing. You need to make sure that all of your like vending machines, your a la carte, if you have that at lunchtime, and your stores or soda machines need to all be Smart Snack compliant, which we will cover on a slide coming up. And then also just staff role modeling is huge. If you don't want your kids to be drinking 32 ounces of soda at lunch, then maybe don't drink 32 ounces of soda at lunch. And access to drinking water is another big one. And a lot of schools are starting to put in the refillable water fountains so that kids can have a water bottle with them at all times, which is really great. Next slide. So the school meals programs, the National School Lunch Program, which provides balanced meals at either low cost or free lunches to children each school day. Right now, one nice thing, I guess, that's come out of COVID is that there's universal feeding. So all students are eating for free, which is great, but that won't last forever. And then we have the school breakfast program that provides reimbursement to states when they're in schools and residential childcare institutes, so that kids are getting food first thing in the morning so that they're not trying to learn on an empty stomach. Next slide. So the smart snacks that we touch base on, all the food and beverages offered or marketed need to follow the smart snacks guidelines. That doesn't mean that you need to like go out and buy new vending machines that have the Dasani water on them instead of the Coke bottle or whatever, but that does mean that you're just like aware of that when it does come time to replace those things. Or you can have kids make posters and cover them up, so that includes vending machines, scoreboards, pretty much anything that people are looking at. It needs to be following these guidelines, hopefully, or cover them up with something else. You can get exemptions for fundraisers throughout the year. If you want to do that, you can just email me and I'll send you the exemption application and you fill it out and get it back. For elementary schools, you can get up to 10 exempted for fundraising. And then for high schools, you can have up to 25. And we have a sheet that you can fill out to keep track of it and everything. But it's also nice to just remember, like, you can also do fundraisers that would definitely fit into Smart Snacks, and then you don't have to exempt anything. And you can have as many as you want. But let's see. So the wellness policy needs to include all of this stuff and make sure that all the food and beverages available for sale on campus during the school day follow Smart Snacks. And the school day is considered midnight of the night before till 30 minutes after school. So if you do have a group of people or something that want to sell Krispy Kremes at a basketball game, it just can't be within 30 minutes of last bell, if that makes sense. Next slide. And so another big part of the wellness policy is physical education and physical activity, because we all learn a lot better like when we're active, like Lauren's brain slide showed. So one way to do that, a lot of schools are starting to create, go ahead, Lauren, sorry. A CISPAP, or not your grandma's sleeping machine, but a comprehensive school physical activity program, which is a multi-component approach that helps schools provide opportunities for the students to be physically active for up to 60 minutes each day. This includes like 5 different key components, which are high quality physical education, physical activity during the day, physical activity before and after school, staff involvement and also family and community engagement. We are seeing quite a few, well, at least the districts that are on the 1801 grant, the physical activity is a big component of that too. But some of them have started having family nights where they just have all of their toys or equipment out on the gym, and families can come and they'll have like healthy snacks for everyone. Other schools have like like I know Juneau schools have a marathon club. So every morning for a whole month, the kids will run 1 mile, and by the end of the month, they've ran a whole marathon. There's also like the biking to school programs, and really it's just anything that can encourage the students to be more physically active. If you have any questions about the comprehensive school physical activity programs, you can go ahead and shoot me an email and I can give you more information about how to get started on that.
One thought there, thanks, Cyde. What you just brought up about the having schools that have like family activities after school, I think is something that tends to be kind of a strength in Alaska compared to nationally. To have like a shared use agreement that the school facilities are available, that people can come play volleyball or basketball in the evening or use the indoor track, especially when in some communities like that is the only like kind of gym type of thing at in the community. So I do think that that's kind of a neat kind of Alaska unique practice that tends to be pretty open. And it's something that can be included as a goal in your physical activity section of your wellness policy to say, we do have open shared use agreements that community groups can use this, and that can be built into policy. So if you happen to get like a principal who's like, no way, then there's a little bit of support there at the policy level.
Yeah. I agree that Alaska seems to have a lot more of them. Even just including like the indoor weight lifting, like an actual gym. I know in Petersburg, you can like get a little pass and they'll give you a key and you can go in anytime that you need to, like the whole community can, which is great.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So we've kind of already talked about this, but what exactly is in a school wellness policy? Nutrition education promotion, physical activity, physical education. You also need to identify other school wellness goals, which could be the trying to have like healthy snacks for birthdays. This isn't like the cupcake police, but if you want to go above and beyond, like we're not saying nobody's like people's mothers can't make them cupcakes for their birthday. That's great. But a few schools have like on their birthdays, instead of having parents bring things, sometimes it just kind of evens the playing field so that the kids whose parents can't make cupcakes, they don't feel left out. But so they don't have those kind of celebrations, but they call the child to the principal's office. This is an elementary school, but they call their child to the principal's office and they get to pick out a book from the principal's library to take home. So it's still kind of a special way to celebrate the kids, but it's not full of sugar. But yeah, or that could be the walk to and bike to school, the marathon club, anything like that. And then we have to cover all the nutrition standards for all the food and drinks sold at school, which is the Smart Snacks program. And the food and drinks are not allowed to be given to children or students as celebrations or rewards for behavior. That's a big no-no with the USDA. So, and then the marketing that we covered with all of your scoreboards and vending machines and all that.
Was that fast enough or?
Yeah, that was good.
Awesome. All right. So this next kind of a pivot, one of the other parts, so those kind of pieces that Kai just touched on were like the 5 minimum kind of required hunks of a wellness policy. And this has been required for like 15 years. I think it was 2006 when it first came out. But the last kind of rule that came about implementing the policy in 2016, they came out with a couple of things around public engagement and implementation, saying that at least annually, schools need to let people know that they have this wellness policy, that they have this student nutrition and physical activity policy, and have family and community members know like where to find it and who to talk to if they have questions about it. And then the second thing was they said, every 3 years, you need to assess how well you're implementing it, which seemed like a good idea. You know, it had been 10 years and there hadn't been much look into implementation, but then USDA said you should do this, and then they didn't really give techniques or tools. So here's 2 tools, one that's at a national level and one that we developed here in Alaska that can kind of help with that assessment and implementation side of wellness policies to be compliant with the regs. The first one is called the WellSAT, and it is looking at the written part of your policy and assessing how strong it is written. And then the second one that's our Alaska tool is called our School Wellness Policy Annual Report Checklist. And it's about what might not be written or is written, but what's getting implemented at this point, and that's sort of a goal setting. So the next couple of slides are going to be kind of describing those 2 things a little bit. So briefly, that WellSat is an online tool. It is from the University of Connecticut's Red Center for Policy and Health. They are now at WellSat 3.0, but if you've happened to do this in the past and you sign in, you can find your old scores as well. And it's just WellSat oh no, I didn't put it on here. I think it's wellsat.com, but I'll make sure and put it in the chat before the end. So what is the WellSat? It assesses the quality of each of your written policy around those same kind of hunks that were on Cyde's last slide. There's a section about what you're doing, what's written about nutrition education, and then those standards for the school meal program, the smart snacks, which is the competitive school foods. Those pieces, those top 3 are probably the most techie things that there's real clear regulations of what can and can't be done. Then physical education and physical activity is a little bit more of a looser, like what are your goals around there? But it has some good recommendations there. Promoting wellness, other wellness activities, and the marketing of foods sold to kids are on there. And then it has a section on what do you do around evaluating your policy and communicating it as well. Those are the kind of the topics. As you look at the policy, you rate. Here's just a little screenshot of it, says something like recess when offered is scheduled before lunch in your elementary schools. You can either click that it's not mentioned, that it's a weak statement, or that it meets your expectations. And when you're looking at policies, that weak or meets tend to be looking for words. The weak things are like, they may be scheduled before lunch, or we're encouraged or we're suggested, versus if it says something like recess will be, they shall be, it is required to be, that's where you get the 2 on those ratings. You'll end up getting 2 scores for each of those sections, and then 2 like total scores at the end. The first is the comprehensiveness. So it's like, out of all these elements of the policy, how many of them are written in your school district's policy? And then a separate one of the strength. How many of them are said very strongly of you shall, you will, versus with some hesitation, the mays and the cans. And legit, you're not always going to be like 100% you shall, you shall, you shall. Schools have a variety of challenges that they're working with. So it's not like we're necessarily hoping that people will be completely at the 100 on each of these. Even the gold standard school wellness policy that we developed to be a model policy, I think we score like a 72 or 75, when it comes to the strength of it, just because we knew that you needed to have some flexibility in there and you need some buy-in from people who are trying to pass it and implement it. Next. A couple tips when you're completing the WellSAT, especially when people don't have great connectivity. Sometimes they want to like print it off and do it on off, like not online. I feel like if you possibly can, doing it online is worth it, because there's these little question marks that help to define what they mean by each little piece. So it's nice to be able to click on that. Another piece is recommending you to do it as a team instead of just alone, because you might not catch something that someone else did. A third one is to keep in mind that you're just assessing the written policy. So like that one point I mentioned earlier of recesses before lunch. Well, let's say recess really is before lunch, but it's nowhere written in your policy. Then don't mark it on there. Save your notes about implementation for this next tool that we'll talk up next. It's just the stuff that's written in the policy. And that kind of makes me just in general think of sometimes, or I feel like it's not very uncommon for people to be like one of the simple ones of like, we'll provide recess every day to kids. People are like, yeah, we will. We just do. It doesn't need to be a policy. And that seems intuitive of like, yeah, we're going to give recess to kids every day. But it can really be worth it to say, we as a school district care about giving our, is it elementary and middle, at least 20 minutes of outside recess every day, except for when there's like these, A, B, and C on it's too cold or safe, to take the time to say, we truly make this a goal, can help you later on. Again, if you happen to get, let's say, a principal that comes, and one of the schools we used to work with, someone came and they really cared about, they were like, we need to have an hour and a half of silent reading time. It was kind of their pet project to try to add this in. Well, if recess isn't supported in a policy, that's one of the first places to go. Or if how much time kids are going to eat, they're like, oh, kids will eat in 5 minutes. Let's cut lunchtime. To have people say like, hey, these pieces are important enough. And even if something comes in to challenge it, we want to be able to have a conversation, and plus and minus have to have the school board engaged instead of just having someone be able to cut it completely. Oh my gosh, why did I go off on that? I just went off.
The other nice part about doing it online
right.
is you don't have to do it all at once. So it breaks it down into sections for you. So if you, let's say you just want to work on improving your nutrition environment, then you can just fill that part out. But yeah, I will just like remind you, don't have to fill out the whole thing all at once or fill out the whole thing all together at all. It's kind of it's kind of a big report, but it's nice because you can just kind of focus in on the one thing that you are trying to fix or working on, or
no, I totally agree. Thank you for that hip.
Yeah.
And I think that you're probably going to have better success too if you're like, okay, let's just talk nutrition education this week and just get that far, break it into hunks. Deciding as a group if you have administrative regulations, if you think they count, I tend to say they count. But if you have kind of a practice at your district that people can kind of ignore or not follow the administrative regs, then sometimes people are like, we want to be as conservative as possible and only count stuff that's in our written policy. At the end, I encourage people to both print and save the scorecard that looks kind of is a little bit more understandable to read as a person who didn't go through it, but then also export the results. It gives you a nice Excel sheet that can be shared, especially if you're one of the like 1801 grantees, to share it with us to be able to see your changes. I already mentioned this, that the 100% strength and comprehensiveness is not always the goal. Not all of the things are required from the feds. I mean, some of the specifics are like about artificial sweeteners, which might be a real high priority at your district or might not be. Some of the things are about like after school programs that really are only if you want to go up above and beyond. So just to know that it can be like, if you're going through and you're not marking everything as done, it doesn't mean like that you're a non-compliant. It just might give you ideas of where to stretch in the future. And then how often do you do this? You really shouldn't, once you've done it once, unless you actually update and change the written policy, there's not really a reason to do the WellSAT again, unless you feel like there's a benefit to like engage new wellness team members to look at it. That is the tool number one, which, as Cyde said, can sometimes feel a little overwhelming. Here is a slightly less one, and I feel like an awesome other tool. So this is our implementation assessment, and this is for that piece that at least every 3 years, you need to look and say how well your wellness policy is being implemented. Some people just do this at an annual level just so they don't have to remember like, hey, is this, has it been 3 years? How many days is it? But we have a fillable PDF, and I'll drop it into the chat before we go, that has, I feel like one of the benefits is it has bolded the items that are actually required by either state requirements or federal requirements versus other pieces in there that are potentially things that you might want to have and you have a goal for, but isn't a specific requirement. So for example, and then again, just as you remember, this is assessing the practices. It's not necessarily just what's written in your policy. So here's like a little cut of, we currently provide this many minutes of recess every day and this many total minutes of physical activity. We do it through intramurals, physical activity clubs, classroom-based activity, just piecing together kind of what are some of the things you might look on there and be like, oh man, we don't do any bicycle trains or walking school buses. I might want to Google what that means. So it gives you kind of some ideas of what to look at. And then after you've done the assessment of your practices, each piece at the end of each kind of required section assists with goal setting or setting your priorities around that, which you need to have at least every 3 years. So taking into account all the pieces that you just did on the 2 pages above, what would you describe are your overall goals and priorities for nutrition education and promotion, or for the smarter lunchrooms techniques? So gives you a place to, as a team, come up with some goals in the section there. Cyde, do you have anything you would add on using the wellness policy checklist before we move on?
Just the 3-year thing. Another thing that a lot of districts do, 'cause your NSLP admin review is usually every 3 years also. So if you kind of marry those up together, then you never forget to do it, or you don't really have to question what year you did it.
That's
I'm
true.
sorry about
No.
doggy barking.
Dogs make sounds sometimes. Yeah, so that is, and usually that's your school nutrition director who knows if it's time for your school lunch programs every 3-year review, right? So they might be the one who would be saying like, hey, wellness team, it's time for us to start to do this. So
Yeah,
that's a good.
yeah, because they're also going to look over your wellness policy when they do the admin review for the NSLP program. So
Great. Any questions from people on the line? I don't see anything typing in here, but feel free to jump in. We'll give you time later too. Okay. So the next kind of little, how are we doing? Yeah, we're doing fine. We're all fine. Next little hunk of time, we just thought we'd discuss a little bit of like, it's been a COVID pandemic. You guys probably are aware of it too. For the last couple of years, which has sort of changed a lot of what schools have been having to prioritize. has changed a lot of the way that schools are doing things, both around nutrition and physical activity, has like put us all on a bunch of stresses. And for, I would say maybe for the first little while, I would say like maybe school wellness policies weren't people's highest priority topic. But I do think that the pandemic has also, as we've been living through it, has kind of shined a light on kind of the ongoing pressing needs of good nutrition and physical activity, um, because of what we've been going through. And I mean, that can be kind of, you know, business closures, people losing their job, people losing their income have led to super higher numbers of food insecurity and hunger, both in Alaska and across the nation, which kind of mentioned with trying to address through universal meals and try to address with trying to knowing schools are a place that can help to get food out. Also, the school closures have meant like for a while, we had to maybe have people pick up or deliver. And like there might be some lessons learned of so many schools doing lunch in the classroom right now. Now they might be more ready to have alternative delivery methods. When it comes to the physical activity side, we've definitely from our program focused a lot on just the pretty well-known benefits of physical activity as stress relief, with even, you know, just a few minutes of getting out and moving your body, getting those endorphins going, being linked with lower depression, better sleep, things that are important during the pandemic. We've also had to help with mitigation plans for, there's lots of really passionate sports and activities people, so trying to help them make sure that instead of completely shutting down during COVID, how can they have safer plans? So we've had new partnerships around that. And then pretty recently, we've seen some studies about physical activity itself being linked to people having higher or poorer COVID outcomes. So we've done some communication on that as well. This slide is only slightly related, but it's about, it was a school testing CDC slide of regular COVID testing helps to keep our schools open, but they're even recognizing like, hey, recess rules, like having your kid at school and being able to play with other kids is a big part of keeping their sanity and yours. So linking together those needs as well. Cyde, do you have anything you'd want to add before I swap to the next one?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit more.
So we talked about how it's universal meals for all students right now, which is great, but it's not going to be around forever, unfortunately. So it's just a good reminder to still have your parents fill out their income eligibility paperwork, because as unfortunate as it's been, a lot of families' incomes have gone down with the COVID pandemic. But one thing that it could help you get is the CEP, which is the community eligibility provision. So if your school has a low enough overall income, then you go on to CEP, which means all of your students will eat for free forever. You're like until your income, like until the year that the income is too high or whatever for your student or for your families. But it is important. A lot of parents are thinking that they don't need to fill it out because their kids are eating for free right now, but it is still very important to get that paperwork in, just so maybe it could mean that they're eating for free for longer.
Right. I've definitely heard of people and like dealing with the stigma that people might be feeling of like losing their job and not wanting to apply for stuff, to try to like communicate, hey, this is something that can help our whole community to make sure that we can keep feeding kids and making sure that people have access to good, healthy foods is, I know that I feel like Food Bank of Alaska has done a fair bit of kind of outreach around trying to get people to sign up for things like that too.
Yeah, that's good because we've been giving them money for that this year for the outreach.
Like, I'm glad someone's seen it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, sorry. Next. Oh, this is back to me. So, yeah, just a couple of pieces. I don't know how many of you guys have been following any of our science echoes, but these were some slides we had. Dr. Zink had had some questions about physical activity and COVID. We know one of the benefits, no, not benefits, one of the things that happens when you have like thousands and thousands of people with a disease is that you get studies that you can find out what's leading to better and worse outcomes. And we've seen that regardless of anything else about you, being physically active, meaning you can, I think they split it up with like more than 10 minutes in the whole week was like the minimum that they put. But if you're getting closer to that, like 60 minutes a day, even better. But being physically active can improve your body's ability to fight infectious diseases like COVID-19 and preventing hospitalization or death. I think a lot of times people think of physical activity as like a long-term benefit, but it's like helping you right now with fighting off the disease. I think this study, the source here, physical activity associated with higher risk for severe COVID outcomes, if anyone wanted to actually look up the study, but I thought this was interesting as well, that even it didn't matter when they controlled for if it was an older person, a person at healthy weight or overweight or obese, if they smoke, if they have any of those other things that you would think would make a big difference between having a bad COVID outcome. They had just being physically inactive made a difference, even if you were at a healthy body weight, young, and a non-smoker. So basically, get out and move. It's is what I'm trying to say. And then again, with that piece of the stress relief, the benefits of recognizing that people are under so much stress during this pandemic. We've done a few of our public safety announcements. This one has a quote of "Take care of your health, body and mind," talking about like one lucky thing of living in Alaska is compared to a big city that might not have as many ways to get out safely and be active. As we have space, we can get out and move. And so staying active during the pandemic has been kind of an ongoing message. There's a YouTube thing, but I'm not going to try to play it because that never worked. Anyone else before we move into kind of back to just general policy? Any questions or thoughts on kind of the COVID pandemic time of looking at student nutrition and physical activity? All right, well, cool. Okay, we're rounding the home stretch here of just a few ideas or suggestions of what you can do or what you can encourage your colleagues to do, or if you're listening to this recording later on, what you can reach out to Cyde and I to do to put your wellness policy into action. One of the benefits of that we worked with the Alaska School Board Association to have a model policy is that it's pretty likely that your school has a student nutrition and physical activity policy. A lot of districts I think there's only a handful of districts in the state that don't subscribe to the AASB policy manual service. And so a lot of them just adopt the policies as a whole. That's great because there's a policy there, but it's also can be a downside because if you haven't had a good public engagement and a good public discussion about it, then people maybe don't even know it's out there or they don't know what's in it. So the idea here is to talk about your wellness policy. Policies won't communicate themselves. You need to go and find what's in there. If there's stuff in the policy that was in the model that doesn't apply well to your district, we're all about encouraging people to actually make those changes. There's a handful of pieces like what you can sell, making sure that they meet the smart snacks regs. Like there's a few things that are those bolded pieces that you'll end up getting, you'll have to come and change back, but there's a lot of parts of it that you can tweak to make your own, to make it fit your district. One of the kind of key examples, we had a piece in there that said, your PE classes shouldn't be larger than the standard one. The general idea was that some people were like putting like 40 kids in a PE class because it was cheaper and they just sent them out to run. And the teacher couldn't really legit like teach those 40 kids the skills of being healthy, physically active. So it was like, don't just shove all your kids into a class. But in some of our smaller schools, if you said it had to be like their other classes, let's say you were a class of 4 fourth graders, you actually needed to combine the 4th through 6th grade to get like the number of kids to play some basketball. So it was better for them to say, no, your classes can be a different size. So things like that. I'm getting into like little in the weeds, but basically talk about your wellness policy, pick things that actually apply to your district and communicate them. Onto that second button, don't talk about everything at once. Like if you just say we have a wellness policy, it's like 7 pages of policy-ish language. Break into the little pieces would be kind of similar to what Cyde was saying. Let's just talk about our nutrition education piece, or let's just talk about the classroom physical activity and recesses piece. Let's just talk about how we involve community members and we're transparent to the community. Break it into little pieces and decide what you want people to know about the policy, what you want them to feel, and what you want them to do. Is it that you want them to implement what's already in there, or that we need to change it, or that we need more input? What are the pieces you want? And then we definitely encourage people to share what's going on and celebrate your successes. As part of our Play Every Day program, we have a Success in Schools webpage where we've done some highlights of schools that are doing things kind of in unique ways. I think Cyde had mentioned, which one did you mention, Cyde? Maybe, oh, I think it was the putting in water bottles and stuff. We have some ones about kids doing water bottles. We have like fish to school. Oh, and the happy birthday celebrations, the books to school. We have a little video about that. So sharing your successes is definitely helpful. Next one, maybe, okay. Yeah. This is a screenshot from a flyer that we have on our school wellness policy list or webpage that's called the Wellness Policy Champion Flyer. If you're wanting to get people involved at your district, has 4 kind of key pieces. Join your wellness committee, find what is in your current policy, and then 2 kind of common topics that a lot of teachers or family members can be involved with. There's supporting classroom and school events to have them be healthy. So healthy events, healthy celebrations, doing a maybe an extra recess instead of the pizza party, doing a dance off instead of a cake thing, you know, thinking of pieces of healthy classroom rewards. And then again, those healthy fundraising, you know, there's things that you can look at to say, like, if you really want to sell foods, you can, you know, sell pizza that meets the smart snacks, but there's a lot of fundraisers that can either be supporting good physical activity or be non-food related that we have some recommendations on there as well. And briefly, we just thank you for calling in or listening. We can do this and support Alaska students in their health and success, but only with people like yourselves. We want to create an Alaska where every child lives, learns, and plays in an environment filled with healthy choices, and we appreciate your partnership. That is us. Cyde and I are each on the slides here if you want to call or email us, but we're here for some questions. And I will drop a couple of those. I'll drop our slides into the chat and also the website where some of those other tools were found into the chat as well. Cyde, anything else you would add at this point?
I don't think so. I put the WellSAT website in there already.
Sweet. Thank you. I'm seeing a thank. I like that. You're welcome. Legit. I mean, I feel like I've said legit 3 times, but thank you for coming. We appreciate your time. Here I go with the PDF of slides if anyone wants some, because everybody loves slides. And what else? Here is the school wellness policy website at the public health side of things. Nope, that's not it. That's our Zoom. That's how you could come to this session. So if you are looking for the model policy that's our gold standard, or if you're looking for that implementation checklist that we shared, they are both on this awesome page that I am so putting in right now, and I should stop recording myself so you guys don't get to hear. Yeah, that's all I'll share. Is there anything you feel like, Lindsay, you put, or Cyde, you put the WellSat one in there?
I did, yep.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming, and tell all your friends that school wellness policies are the best. Really putting stop now.